their own skills. One thing I also feel passionately, about debates is because I'm not sure how you all are, your encounters with students, but I've had the opportunity to also teach EDUC, which is a requirement for all incoming freshmen, as well as students that are high school credit retrieval students. And what I found is a lot of students honestly don't know how to talk to a professor. They, they don't know how to approach a professor. They don't know how to step away from their everyday language. I mean, I'm sure you have all gotten emails that are slang written, that have some very weird spelling. And what it shows me is that there's been a misstep in their career where somewhere along the way they haven't been given the skills to be professional. So I teach psychology. However, we are all college teachers. And one thing about the college experience is preparing our students to become professional people in the workforce. And so one thing that Bloom's taxonomy and using debates does is it helps us get the students preparing for these skills, because the ultimate goal of college is that they graduate and they get a career or some sort of job, right? That's going to supply their needs of living. Well, if we have students that don't know how to talk to their bosses, that don't know how to show up on time for work because they never learned how to show up on time to class, then we are failing as instructors to prepare them for that part, because it's my job isn't just to teach psychology as well as prepare them as individuals for the workforce. So I found that using the debates and helping them expand their own talents and build their confidence does so much more than just teaching them psychology, but rather it's a step forward into being able to face the real world, because the dynamics and the procedures that I have set up with debates requires them to show up on time, requires them to present professionally, requires them to work as a team, which are all skills that need to be practiced in the workforce. So overall, research can say what it says, and we know that that students will benefit from debates. But as instructors, we've seen it in our own students that come straight out of high school and they barely know what MLA format is or APA format is. They're like, I don't know what you're talking about, sir. So we have to step back and begin addressing them and being like, this is what it is to be a professional. So I think part of my goal in doing this training was to also help us as instructors see these are assignments that help us step away from not only just teaching our subject, but also teaching the student how to one day become a professional in the world. So how do we begin to, if we're going to do this, how do we begin to look at a debate? So I think when I started to look at how am I going to incorporate the debate, I knew I wanted the foundation of Bloom's taxonomy. How do I start building from that? So the first thing I had to look at in my curriculum is what is the one thing that if at the end of the semester, at the end of 16 weeks, what is the one thing I want to know without a doubt that the students understood? And that idea came from one of the trainings that I did with adjunct certification. I can't remember what training I was sitting in, but I remember they had us, they had us think about what is the one thing you want your student to learn in 16 weeks. And so I thought about it and I thought, well, for my class, a psychology class, the one thing I would like my students to leave at the end of 16 weeks to know is have a better understanding of the psychological approach. Okay, because in psychology, there are different approaches in how you can examine behavior and mental cognition. Right? And so my mind was, I would like for the students to understand what psychological approaches are and how using these approaches can help us interpret everyday behavior and everyday thinking. So that was my initial, okay, this is the goal. I need to create an assignment that they can take this one concept and expand on it. And so when you're looking for yourself and you're looking in your own class and you want to incorporate a debate, I would say you need to begin by asking, what is the one thing you want your students to learn at the end of the semester? Because typically all of us may have one theme, one issue or situation that we can just take that one idea and pretty much web it out so that they can really get hands-on into it. Julie, is there anything that I need to address in the chats? Only because I keep seeing it flashing.
People are commenting, first of all, that it was you know, fitting that this session was happening the same week as this presidential debate. I didn't think about that. So Aaron had commented that he didn't think that that debate met with the definition of what debates are supposed to be.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And people are asking about the PowerPoint and recordings, and so I put the YouTube channel in the chat box. Unfortunately, I forgot to hit record until like about 5 minutes ago. So people are commenting about the informal speech that students are using in their emails. So I think that was important that you hit on, you know, communication for the workplace.
Okay.
And there were no other specific questions.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing an important. Okay. So sorry, I guess the people are not going to get my $5 million first 20 minutes, whatever.
I'm so sorry. Let's
It's okay. It happens. It happens.
Sarah Beth, she private messaged me. Is the recording going to be available?
It's okay. It's okay. Okay. So now, once you decide, once you figure out, okay, I have the topic, I have the issue, then you have to see where can the debate be implemented, right? Okay. Is there an issue or topic where your subject can be divided into stances? Okay, that's going to be important because, as we said in the beginning, the definition of a debate is you want two opposing sides, right? So you want a side that is for the issue or topic and a side that is against the issue or topic. And fortunately for me, we do in psychology, we look at biological aspects, we look at consciousness, we look at behavior. And so I started to look at where is there an issue that is very controversial, that I can have the students apply my psychological approaches to this issue. It was actually, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was in our textbook for psychology. It brought up the case, many of you might remember, Terry Schiavo in 2003 or 4. She was a woman that had suffered a stroke, and she was in a vegetative state for many years, and it became a very political debate on whether or not they should remove her from her feeding tube. So this actually was like a kind of keynote, something that was in our textbook, and I said, aha, I have my controversy right here. So what I did was essentially I looked at what does the connection of this issue have for the students, right? So I have my topic, which is I want them to learn about the psychological approaches. I have the issue, which is Terry Schiavo. Was she alive? Was she dead? Can I use this case to apply it to psychology? Of course I can. Now, the thing that you all, if you decide to use a debate, is do you want the students to work in groups or do you want them to work independently? In my debate, I have them work in groups, and I actually will pair them. I will break them up into groups. They don't get to choose who's in their group member. I put them in groups, and I actually kind of give them, I don't give them positions, but I tell them, I recommend you have a speaker, and I recommend you have someone that's going to prepare the rebuttals, someone who's going to be a note taker. So you'll see my actual breakdown of the debate in a few slides. But I pretty much, because I'm not a debate class, right? They're not learning how to debate. They're just basically learning psychological principles and doing a debate. So I give them the outline of how a debate works. Okay, I said, according to debates, this is how it should look. So I give them the outline of this is what you need to do. And then I do my part in teaching them the psychology behind it. You want to look at how you're going to grade the debate, because one of the things that can become very troublesome is if you have them work in groups, well, how do you grade fairly? Because we all know someone might do more work than another, and someone might not even show up. And that is something I get settled or attempt to get settled from the get-go. I tell them we are all college students. And if you decide that you're going to take a break from class and not participate, you're going to earn the proper 0 that you deserve. Because initially in the group, I will talk to the team members and ask them who is participating, who is not participating. So they are being graded as a group, but I am also grading them as individuals in regards to you need to carry your own weight. And so that's something that you would also want to consider in applying, because the way I do it, I know may be much more work and maybe more complicated, because you're kind of grading double. You're grading the group, but you're also looking at the student themselves. How long will you give the students to prepare? See, so for my debates, typically I will let them prepare. We work on it from about 2 to 3 weeks. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm lecturing the same thing for 2 to 3 weeks, because I actually go over all of the chapters that can be applied to what they are debating over. So for instance, we debate over the Terry Schiavo case. The students are divided into students that are siding with the husband in regards to he was right, she was unconscious, she should have had her feeding tube removed. And then other students are taking the stance with the parents saying, no, she was conscious, she was very much alive, she should not have been taken off the feeding tube. So once they're given their stances, I look at my material and I apply the chapters that can help them prepare and understand exactly what is happening in Terry Schiavo. So we look at biology, we look at senses, we look at consciousness. I will actually go over in that whole 2 or 3 weeks, I will actually go over with the students about 3 or 4 chapters. So that's where I say it's one topic, you know, it's one debate, it's one topic. However, I'm webbing it throughout the course. And so every time we come to class, I'm reminding them, look, this chapter, this is how you can apply it to your case for Terry Schiavo. If you're with the dad, if you're with the parents, this is a good point to make. You know, if you're with the husband, this is a good point to make. So don't get overwhelmed by feeling like, well, she devotes 2 or 3 weeks to this one thing, because it is seem like a long time to cover something, but we actually are moving through the textbook quite rapidly. So it is something that I do. I give them time in class as well to work in small groups. One thing that I would strongly advise when we're doing, if you consider doing a debate in class, is setting up a who, what, where, when, meaning who's in whose group, right? You know, I divide them into the groups and I say, this is your group, this is your stance, this is what you need to prepare for. I give them the what, this is what you're doing. You need to have a speaker, you need to have rebuttals. And the most important, most important part is setting up the when and where, because we're taking about 2 or 3 weeks to do this debate. What I like to tell my students is that I don't have tests or quizzes in my class, but the equivalent to that is this debate. You know, and they get excited when I tell them, oh, we don't have tests or quizzes, but I do have 2 debates, so, which end up actually working out. In other words, I may not have tests or quizzes, but these debates have the same effect that a test would. So over the 2 or 3 weeks that we work on this debate, I am constantly reminding them, your debate is October 13th, and we are starting promptly at 8 o'clock. Okay, I constantly am reminding them, because one thing that I advise is to make it timed. In other words, each team has a set amount of time to present their argument and to rebuttal against each other. This is the reason I do that is because we only have an hour and 15 minutes of class. And so I want to ensure that each team gets the full time that they can get in order to present their issue and in order to basically face off against each other.
Can we pause for a second, Marisela?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I had to walk away for a second.
It's okay.
I'm not sure if these questions got answered in my absence, but
no, probably not.
There are several folks asking about doing debates in the online setting.
Okay, so I will. I talk about that at the very end.
Okay, so we'll look forward to hearing that. And then Sophia asks, she's just clarifying, you assign the stance.
Yes.
You do not let them choose, correct?
No, I do not let them choose. And I'll tell you why. For the Terry Schiavo case, okay, it is very controversial because most people are going to say, well, I don't want to say most people, but basically the way it happens is I will show the case of Terry Schiavo, what happened to the students as a whole. And we'll talk about it and I'll say, well, what is your opinion? Do you think the husband was right? Do you think the husband is wrong? Most of the time, and I like to tell them that they're heartless, is I tell them most of the time they will side with the husband. They will say she should have been taken off the feeding tube. And I tell them, man, y'all are heartless. And of course I'm joking around with them, but I assign the stance because the majority of them will already have a stance in their mind regarding to what they would do if it was them. And so why I assign the stances, I tell them, this is not about you. This is about learning psychology. This is about learning the biology of our mind, of our brain, the functioning of our brain. This is about learning what consciousness is. And this is about taking the psychological principles and applying that concept to this case. So it's not about what you would do personally if you were in this situation. So that's why I assigned the stance, because what happens, I would say about 95% of the time, students will realize that they had the wrong definition of consciousness, and they misinterpret what happened to Terry Scheibel. I've had students go from being for the parents to transitioning to understanding why the husband did what he did, to the opposite, where people were initially for the husband and then they realized, okay, now I understand why the parents did. So to answer that question, yes, I assigned the stance because one of the things that I like to teach them in psychology is we have to be objective. As it, when we are looking at behavior, when we are trying to analyze why someone does something, we cannot use our own personal opinion. So we have to be objective. So kind of helping them to step into what being objective is forcing them to see something in a way they wouldn't have seen it had I not given them that stance.
Did you want to say anything, Sophia, or anyone else about that? Because I think that's pretty powerful, the whole perspective taking and getting them to take other perspectives. Maricela, do you care if people unmic to?
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I really like that, and I'm a composition teacher, and our next assignment coming up is argument. So I'm really able to apply, and I'm trying to develop in my mind how can I incorporate and get students to participate in a debate as we go into our argument paper. Mm-hmm. So I think this is wonderful.
Yeah, I was going to say, Maricela, I think it's great. I mean, I kind of have observed that when, if you ask them for their opinion, they give you their opinion, which is grounded in like nothing but their opinion.
Uh-huh.
But when you ask them to take a role and like work through it, it's kind of like an experiential activity. It's like, okay, let me kind of work through it. And they will come out of it with a different perspective. And then it's such an eye opener to see them say, wow, now that I kind of, delved into it, it's, I'm seeing things differently. I mean, I think that's kind of enlightening as an instructor to see that, right?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, because, and that's kind of why I talk about Terry Scheibel before I assign them their stances, to hear where their opinion is coming from, because a lot of times, it's coming from, like you said, Tony, just what they know, and it's not. It's all about, again, teaching them what is research, teaching them how to prepare, again, to be good employees. Because you don't want to go tell your boss, I think this and this is going to work, and you have no justification for what you're saying. And so, kind of giving them the stance is allowing them to expand on, okay, I didn't know this, but now that I'm seeing, this is why I think these reasons could be why I think what I'm saying is correct. So I have in the past, we have 2 debates initially in class, and these debates I prepare, I give them the stances and all of that. At the very end of the semester, I have in the past made a debate a final, where they get to choose their stance. But that's after we've already done the ones that I initially give them the stance for. So I have practiced them having their own stance before, but it's after we've already kind of done it with the setup that I have. In going back to what I was saying about making it timed, it's because also, as I said, typically we have a class of anywhere between 25 to 30 students. And so you're going to have groups of 4 to 5 students. If you do the groups, okay, if you do the groups, you're going to have groups that have anywhere between 4 to 5 students. And you want to give opportunity for every student in the team to kind of give their take on their team's stance. And so I emphasize greatly on telling them your debate is October, whatever, and I start promptly at whatever time class starts. And students have learned the hard way. They have come and the door is locked. And I do not let them in because I tell them, once I have started the debate, I am not stopping, because what happens is I randomly will call whatever group. I will call, okay, I say, okay, Terry, group B for Terry's parents, go up first. So I tell them you have to show up on time because I don't know what group I'm going to call first. When I get to the table, when I get to the classroom, I line up all my papers of each group and I sit there and I say, whoever is in front of me is who's going first. And so I greatly reiterate to them, be on time, because once I call my first group, I am closing the door and no one is coming in anymore, because I need to have time for every group to go, for every group to get their allotted time. And after every group has gone is when I meet with the groups and ask them about the participation of everyone. Okay, so I have to have time for this. And so there's been students that have been sitting on the opposite side of the door for the debate. And again, that's preparing them. I tell them at the end of class, I tell them this is exactly like if you would have been late for work. You know, this is, I'm not only giving you an assignment for class, but I'm preparing you for the career and work. You know, you could have gotten docked however many minutes of time. So I definitely strongly advise if you're going to do the debate, you do have to be careful with the time and not let it escape you, because you want to give each group their fair chance.
I just wanted, since you're talking about time, I just wanted to give you a time check. It's almost 11:15, but it's 11:12. So we have just over 15 minutes left. Just
okay, thank you. Yeah, and it's good because I think I'm almost towards the end. Anyways,
so my question is, and maybe you just haven't, you're going to cover it, because I teach business management, and this is perfect. This is what we kind of try to do, but I don't do it well because of the online class. I can't make my students be at a certain place at a certain time because it's an originating online class, which means they don't have, it's not because of COVID, so they don't have a regular class time. So I try to do drop-ins, but where I'm available to them on drop-in basis, morning and night, to accommodate their work schedule. So how would I do this?
Yeah, so in the next slide, that's where I'm going to talk about the
Okay, so we're just not there yet.
No,
sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. So if you see here to the left of your screen, this is the actual Word document that I give the students. Okay, these are their instructions. We've already covered Terry Shivel. Like, in other words, I've given the background of who she is. This is the rubric that they are to follow. So I tell them they need to prepare an opening statement, which would include supportive facts. They need to show at least 3 supportive facts that would show me they understand what they're talking about. And then they also prepare for the rebuttals. In other words, the team has to prepare for what they think the other team might come against them with, okay? And if you see here is where I kind of guide them in saying in the teams, it would be beneficial to have a speaker who presents the argument, then someone who's prepared to kind of be the backup speaker in case for whatever reason the speaker cannot be there. And then I have someone to be a note taker. So if you see here to the bottom of the right corner, initially this is exactly how it would look in my classroom. I set it up to where you have the 2 speakers, and then the rest of the team is kind of sitting off to the side. You have them with, I've seen it, they have their papers, their notes that they go through. Someone's taking down notes as the other team is talking in regards to, like, I think this is something we can question them about. So initially they are both speakers are given time to present what I call their opening argument or opening statement. After each speaker goes, that's when we kind of open it up to the floor to where anyone from the team can kind of rebuttal back and forth. Now, down here is how I grade them, like point wise. This box is empty because in this particular debate, I didn't have like a, what do you call it, peer participation, where the peers would kind of evaluate each other. For this particular one semester, I didn't do that, but in debates in the past, I do have points allotted so that the team members can evaluate each other. So this is how I break down the points according to the way I set up grading and in regards to how many points each assignment is worth. Now, if you see here, because in my classroom, I don't have extra credit or makeup assignments or anything like that. But I do have opportunity for you to gain more points on one assignment than usual. And the debates are usually these assignments, because if you see here, the speaker is in charge of gaining most of their points by presenting the argument and understanding of topic. Then once we open up the rebuttals, every rebuttal is worth a certain amount of points. And the more rebuttals they do, the more they can come up with more points. So I've had students who come out with more than 8 points, more than whatever the assignment is worth. They'll come out with, I think one time the highest was like 16. And so this is the only assignment where I have like an opportunity for you as a student to kind of recuperate if you've missed an assignment in the past. Or if you're not doing very well in class, I always advise them, then prepare well for your debate, because a debate will be an opportunity for you to gain more points than average. But that's my classroom and that's how I do it. And so, as I said, one way to organize the debate classroom is dividing them into teams, assigning stances. During the period of the 2 or 3 weeks, I work with them individually in their groups. And then it's just a constant reminding them of when the debate is going to happen and what time it's starting. It's the equivalent for those of you who have done a test and you tell them, I'm starting this test exactly at whatever time. This is exactly the same thing. The only difference is this is not a test, it's a debate. And so for those of you, I know, right, this is all great, debate, Maricela, but how do we use it in the virtual scenario that we're in? So I took this semester, I took that Terry Schivel debate and I said, okay, how can I apply it to the virtual setting? So I did not hold a debate like through Zoom, just simply because we had a lot of students that were having complications with internet. How are we going to be able to hear each other? So as of right now, I have not had a debate, like a live debate on Zoom, okay? However, I have had where they can record themselves and I review it. In other words, they're recording their stance and they're presenting their argument, and I, as the instructor, view essentially their debate. The only thing that they don't get to do is rebuttal against the other team, because it's right now, for me, it was a little bit overwhelming trying to, how do I organize opposing teams and everyone's in a specific spot on my screen. So the directions for my virtual debate were pretty much the same as in person, where they're given the subject of Terry Schiavo. We go over the same chapters. They're all given a stance, and they're all given the exact same thing that we would do in person. And I even here, down here, I've highlighted where it says teams. I break it down and tell them, okay, we're not going to have a speaker. We're not going to have a note taker like we would do in real life. But I do give them a breakdown of, you want one person to be in charge of perhaps writing the opening statement. Another person maybe can be in charge of being doing the argument. Another person being responsible for presenting the understanding of topic. And I also advise them, I tell them, you all as Alamo College students have access to do Zoom meetings as a team. And you can meet as a team through Zoom. And if you want, I can sit in on the meeting, which I actually did for several groups. And I helped them basically build their argument. And so what they will submit to me, since we're not having a live debate, they will submit to me basically a written argument, something that they would have read in person. They submit to me a Word document that has the written debate, which is going to include opening statement, argument, understanding of topic. As I said, there's still plenty room for making adjustments on my part. I would say that this would be the one thing that it can get better and better, because I would like to hold a debate just as the same that I would in person. However, there's just a lot of technical difficulties between students sometimes that I haven't done it yet. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to do it, but I think that I have a good foundation to where, okay, this is the idea. Now, how do I incorporate it in the virtual world? So, Sarah Beth, to kind of answer your question, these students were not given a certain day or time, like to present, other than they just had a deadline to submit as a group. And so they submitted as a group in Canvas their argument. And that is essentially my presentation over debate. Julie, I don't know if there's any questions.
There are questions. Let me go back a little bit. Everybody's loving the presentation. I can see everybody's wheels turning. I'm trying to figure out how they're going to implement this. Brianda asks, do you give roles within the groups and have them decide what role they would like, or have them decide what role they would like? For example, speaker, researcher, moderator, note taker. So she wants to know about the roles. Tony asks about, rather than remote, how could this happen in a strictly online course? And then Brianda also asks, do you give them a dress code? So that's 3 questions that have come up so far.
So, okay, so the first one about note taker and the actual positions, when I meet with the groups when I meet with them in small groups, I'll ask them, who's the speaker, who's this, like, have y'all decided that? And so many times the group, they kind of already break it amongst themselves. So when that happens, I don't really mess with it. But when there's groups that need more guidance, I will kind of say, okay, well, who's not afraid to speak, who is, better at this and that. Because I do have students that are just completely like, Miss Madrigal, I cannot talk in public for the life of me, and so I say, okay, that's fine. But, because there's some that will come like in panic saying, am I going to get a 0? And so I always tell them, it's okay. There's a role for everybody. If you are going to have a heart attack by just sitting in the front of the classroom, I need you to be the note taker. Is it because I am not going to have someone pass out? So it just depends on the group. Some groups have students that are very strong and they can kind of designate themselves, and where their other groups need more guidance, then I will kind of step in and help them figure out who would be the best speaker and whatnot. The online, how do we do this virtually and online? So again, Tony, that's something like, again, I would like to be better. I think for me, one of the things like with online is one of the things that I would look into is, can we get a team to record themselves like how we're doing right now? We're having a meeting and recording, but instead of having a meeting, we're having a debate. And essentially, I just either they record themselves or I, as the instructor, record them, and then later on grade it, as the course goes on. That's one thing that I've thought about. But as of right now, for my online class, what I have them do is essentially just submit a written document, because on Canvas there are ways, for those of you who don't know, Canvas will automatically set your class up or students in groups. So all I have to do is set up the assignment, set up the debate, and Canvas will group students. And so I pretty much online do it the same way that I would in person, where I give them the stance, I give them the psychological approach, I do all of that. The only thing that I haven't got into really perfecting is holding a live debate. And then I don't know what I can't remember what the last.
About dress code. Do you have
Oh, yes, dress code.
Way?
I don't initially for this psychology class give them dress code. It's more about, I tell them their presentation in speaking and making their points. However, in EDUC, which is student development, I do have a particular assignment that it's like this, and I do have them dressed professionally.
I missed another question too. Thank you. How many people per team is too many?
I would say you don't want to go over more than 5. 4 is the perfect, right? 4 is perfect. But sometimes with class work, like especially if you have high school students, that's one of the things that comes up, because I can only group high school students with high school students, because one thing I tell them is that we're going to have time in class to prep, but you also have to spend time outside of class prepping. So because of that, sometimes a high school group might have a little bit more than I would like. But ideally, I would say no more than 5. If you can get 4 in every group, then that's the perfect scenario. But sometimes if you have to do 5, then do the 5, but don't go over the 5.
Okay, thank you.
Those are all the questions in the chat. We have about 2 minutes left. Would anybody like to unmute and ask additional questions?
I'm gonna stop the share.
I don't have a question necessarily. I guess I just have a follow-up. So I have like 1,000 questions because I love this idea. And I teach EDUC 1300. So some of my classes have some of those freshman students in them. So I understand what you're saying about grouping those specifically together, but I hate having them miss out on the chance to hear other viewpoints, especially people that are older and have, lived the world kind of thing. But going back to the idea of needing specific roles, because I teach EDUC and because these students are very much in the prime of starting college. They need a lot more guidance. So in that capacity, would you recommend having very specific roles for each group?
You can. Um, for me, I try to manage what I know I need to manage. And sometimes giving them specific roles is something that I want to try to see them work out creatively amongst themselves, because for me, I see it in my mind as prepping them for an assignment they would be given at work. Your boss isn't always going to be on top of you telling you this and that. I mean, well, we hope not.
Yeah.
We would hope that the boss isn't doing that. And so, so if I see that a team is struggling, you know, I do go in and I hear it and I'll give my advice. But in the beginning, I try to have them see, kind of come up on their own creatively. Okay, I think I can do this and I think I can do that. So I wouldn't jump to it in the very beginning, only until I see that the team is kind of, okay, they need help with this. Then I would, but I would first give them a chance to try on their own.
Okay, thank you.
Can you unmute?
Sorry, we are at time. Would anybody, we appreciate you all being here. I did put a survey into the chat, but I will email that to you. So if you didn't have a chance to click on it, don't worry. And so you can give Maricela some feedback. I think we all learned a lot, and I think you did a really thorough job of explaining the reasoning behind doing this, how to do it, and then kind of problem solving with everybody on the context that we're in. So I really appreciate you being part of the TLC's webinar series, Maricela. Thank you. And I'm sure you can reach out to Maricela directly by email if you have follow-up questions. Is that safe to say?
Yes, yes, yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
All right. Well, Maricela, do you have any final words?
No, just that I will send you the PowerPoint so that if you want, you can give it to the faculty that is interested in having it.
Wonderful. Yes, I'll include that in my Monday follow-up email with the link to the survey. So thank you very much. And just want to plug our 1:30 webinar. It'll be on accessibility in the online remote classroom. So if you're interested in that, it's also in Alamo Talent. So
Julie,
thank you all.
I had a quick question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
I
go
was wondering
ahead.
if we could also get a copy of the rubric for the assignment as well, if you'd be willing to share
For
that.
my Word document?
Yeah, for the debate, the rubric we use.
Oh, well, yeah, because it'll be in the PowerPoint. It's in the PowerPoint already.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Maricela.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maricela. I'm in the adjunct certification program right now, and I've been to lots of these, and yours was the best so far. So
Oh,
thank you.
thank you.
Awesome feedback. That is so nice. That's wonderful.